I bring you greetings in Jesus' name. My name is Henry Marcus Garba. I'm a graduate of Africa International University in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm a Nigerian, and it's a privilege to also participate into this year's conference. And I'm presenting a paper on the topic towards a transformative church mission strategy, a reflection of Francis Xavier's missions theology for cross-cultural integration of the gospel among Muslims in northern Nigeria. Now, by way of introduction, I want to begin by saying, outlining four things. One, that Christianity that impacts a society is Christianity that centers its theology on missions. Secondly, a Christianity that makes meaning to the society in modern times must make missions the centerpiece of its theology. And thirdly, the Christian church is God's instrument of transformation in an ever-changing world, and an effective mission theology is the means of fulfilling this noble task. And so world evangelism, for us to do global evangelism, is to engage ourselves adequately in the theology of mission, or developing a theology of mission that makes meaning to the society. And fourthly, a true and effective mission theology is one that makes the cross of Christ the fulcrum of its theology. Our basis of missions theology, or a theology of mission, is the cross of Christ. And so this study or this presentation examines the mission theology that Francis Xavier adopted in preaching the gospel in Japan. And this is between 1549 and 1552. And again, I want to say this. What I am arguing here is that there is a need to explore from history some theological measures that will effectively help the modern church in contextualizing the gospel. And Francis Xavier offers us this theological inculturation model. Why did I choose Francis Xavier? I know we are used to people like William Carey, David Livingstone, whose history of Christian missions and their role in Christian mission is so enormous. But again, Francis Xavier is very silent in history of mission. But I want to emphasize today that he is one who laid, or he is one among those who laid the foundation for modern missions. Xavier also was passionate to preach the gospel to people he did not know. Xavier demonstrated love and sacrifice, and he remained an inspiration to other missionaries that rose after him. And I want to say, even William Carey, even David Livingstone recognized Xavier as a role model. Xavier's enthusiasm paved the way for mission success, as well as inspired many who labored for Christian missions from the 16th century onward. Even Xavier influenced the Protestant mission that later started in the 18th century. Now I want to look at two perspectives of Xavier. One, he was able to adequately integrate the gospel without tension, despite the high bureaucracy in Japan. He was like Paul, who will say, I became all things to all men, so that in any way I might save some. Xavier was not judgmental. That is the second thing of the Japanese cultural belief. However, he resolved to dialogue with the people, and that gave him a breakthrough in reaching out with the gospel. Now, in his theology of missions, I am looking at three things, three basic areas that needed our attention. One is Xavier's theology of cultural adaptation. Like I said, Xavier did not reject the traditional practices of Japan, but he looked for ways of dialoguing with them. And what are some of the things he did? One, he was conscious of the cultural richness of Japan. He was looking at the positive side of their culture, taking advantage of it to reach out to them. He was respectful of the social settings of the people, and he sought to present a balanced religion, especially among the rich men, or what we call the Japanese interlocutors, Xavier was pragmatic in his approach to the gospel. And except in matters of doctrines and Christian morals, even at that, Xavier will resolve in dialogue with the people. And he acknowledged areas of strength in the Japanese communal character, using that to reach out with the gospel. And finally, he developed a mission approach of accommodating Japanese by dressing in the silk garment of the feudal lords, rather than the ordinary cotton fabric of the poor. So his concern was not the poor, even though missions is for everyone, but he was targeting the rich people, the rich class of Japan. And he succeeded. Now, the second thing he did was to use the native language. Now, Xavier said native language must be the means of preaching the gospel to Japan. So what did he do? He admonished all missionaries to learn the native language of the people. Secondly, he emphasized that natives must be or were to be the interpreters of all future missionaries. And even him, he adopted a Jew as an interpreter, and through whom he was able to translate the Gospel of Matthew and other Christian literatures throughout the country. Xavier adopted the language of the people as the means of communicating the gospel, a methodology that made Christianity to flourish in Japan. The third thing was his theology of educating native clergy. Xavier insisted that native clergy were to be educated. They were not to remain in that low level of education. They were to be given the best of education. He emphasized that. And so he rallied around him native clergies who were his interpreters, as well as were taught in Latin and other languages, through whom they were able to translate Christian literature into Japanese languages. New converts were to be adequately used to lead the way for other missionaries. So natives were to be at the forefront. Missionaries who came from Europe and other places were only following the natives. And so because they knew the terrains, they were guiding the missionaries in their missionary journey. And so Xavier insisted that natives were to be trained in vernacular. This aspect I want to emphasize, that he insisted that they must be trained in their local languages. And that gave him, or that made Christianity contextual. That made Japanese to see Christianity as their own. Now let's come back to Christian missions in northern Nigeria. And I want to say two things. One, that Christian missions in northern Nigeria is passive in the academia. Very rare do you find people writing about Christian missions in northern Nigeria. You hear about Christian missions in southern Nigeria, what missions did. Some of us have heard about Samuel Ajayi Crowther, the first African black bishop. But what place does history or Christian missions have in history in northern Nigeria? This is a challenge. The second thing, I want to say that the story of Christian missions in northern Nigeria has or faced a lot of challenges, and these challenges are categorized into three. One, Islamic domination and marginalization. There were very little minority tribes in northern Nigeria, and these minority tribes were faced with the challenge of Islamization and marginalization. The second major challenge that Christian missions had in northern Nigeria was the restriction by British colonial government. Missionaries were restricted, were denied opportunities to reach out. They were told that the northern Nigeria had a religion already, which was Islam. And so it was a major challenge. And therefore, missionaries were faced with fear, harassment, challenges. And let me say this, they were, even though they were, at a point, they were given the liberty to do missions, yet they were given poor reception by the Muslim Emirates. What were some of the strategies? Because of all these challenges, what were some of the strategies that missionaries adopted in northern Nigeria? They adopted two aggressive measures. One, they resolved to rural evangelism. They went to rural areas to do evangelism, forgetting about the elites, about the urban settings. Secondly, they built what we call bush schools. And these schools are areas where children were trained and given basic standard of education, elementary education, to have basic knowledge of what is right and wrong. And from there, missionaries had in mind that these children can grow and become Christians and also impact the society, which of course they succeeded. They developed adequate mission strategies for rural missions with little concentration on the elite because of fear and harassment. Challenges in modern missions in northern Nigeria. What are some of the challenges? Now, there are many challenges, but I want to mention just four. One, the use of rural strategies to do modern missions. Now we are adopting old models to do modern missions, and the world is changing. Things are becoming global. Life is transforming. Yet we are adopting all these old systems to do missions. Secondly, many mainline mission organizations have dismantled their mission mandates, replacing them with institutional and governmental systems. Instead of building a community or a church that is focused towards mission, we are building an institutional structure. We are concerned about gathering people instead of sending them. And many of the mainline missions assumed that the already established churches can work independently without interference. So when they were handing over to these indigenous churches, they forgot about what strategies these churches could do to do missions as life continues to change. So this is a major challenge in our contemporary society in northern Nigeria. And again, there is passive conception of the elite. Now, while we are doing missions, even the little that we are doing in missions, we are focusing on the poor, forgetting the wealthy, the high class, the middle class. And that is a problem in northern Nigeria. Now, so that brings us to the integration of Xavier's theology of mission and how we can adequately integrate it in northern Nigeria. Now, I want to say that there are ways we can do that, and why we must give attention to that is because of migration. People are migrating from the rural areas to the urban areas. So Nigeria is becoming urbanized, more urbanized and more industrialized than in the 1800s and the early 1900s. So there is need to reevaluate our mission theology. So how can we integrate Xavier's theology of missions in our contemporary mission practice? And I have 7. I will just mention 3 because of time. 1, there is the need for an evaluation of the present approach to missions. We must reevaluate our strategies. There is a need to adequately understand the culture and settings of the Hausa people in northern Nigeria. When you don't understand their culture, the Hausa culture calls for respect, it is very adamant to change. So our theology must be developed in a way that it will reach the people in their culture. And therefore there is a need for mission inculturation. And the third thing I want to emphasize is the last one, that there is the need to reorient the church. Now I'm talking about the church. I'm not talking about the Hausa community in northern Nigeria, but about the church. That whatever means or medium we are adopting to do missions in northern Nigeria, we must remember the elite. So there is the need to abuse in our minds that passivity, that passive mindset that the rich or the wealthy do not have a place in the missions of God. Jesus Christ remembered Zacchaeus, and we see Cornelius invited Peter, and he served as a role model that even the elite can also enjoy the theology of the church. Finally, despite all of these that I have mentioned, I want to conclude by saying that people, especially in northern Nigeria, especially the Hausa community, they want to become Christians without being culturally proselytized. They want to be Christians within their racial, their cultural, and social class. Therefore, a contextual Christianity ought to meet people within their existing cultures. not to change their cultures. Also, there is a need for the theology of Christian missions to be re-strategized to reach the middle and high class of the society, and not only the poor, because Christianity is not for the poor as much as it is for the rich. And Xavier's theology of mission provides the contemporary mission frontier with a theological roadmap that could help modern missions to reach the urban communities. And I pray that these models are not only relevant in northern Nigeria, but they are also relevant all over the world. They are relevant here in Nigeria, they are relevant in Asia, they are relevant in America, they are relevant everywhere. And so we must remember that as we do, or as we develop a theology of missions or missions theology, let us remember that inculturation model is the best practice. Let us remember that reaching people in their culture is paramount. And I pray that God will bless us and bless us all in Jesus' name.